Hell, Ruy Lopez happening after e4, e5 is one of the most played and most classical chess openings. You'll face it many times in your games, and in this video I'd like to share with you the most common errors of black players and how you can punish them and win impressive games. So let's start off with this line, which is, really just the classical line of the Ruy Lopez. Here, after castling, the two most played moves by black are either bishop to e7 or pawn b5. And most players think that there is no big difference in which move to play first, and many of them will go ahead and play b5 first. I've checked it in the database, like b5, just for comparison, was played in approximately 250,000 games, and bishop e7 300,000. So, like, both of the moves are approximately equally popular. But b5 is actually wrong, because after bishop b3 and bishop e7, instead of playing the classical line rook to e1 or something like this, you've got a lot more interesting option. Here you can play pawn d4 and rush into the attack immediately. Now, what if black takes this pawn? Well, then you push your e-pawn forward, attacking the knight, and actually black is already virtually lost here, which is like quite a surprising and good thing for you, of course. If knight goes here to e4, you're playing bishop d5, attacking this knight once again and also pinning the other knight on c6. Anyway, the bishop from e4 has to go, therefore it'll likely go to c5. Now you take this pawn on d4 and put pressure onto this knight with your both minor pieces. Therefore black will protect it with the bishop. You keep attacking with knight f5. This time the knight is hitting this pawn on g7, so they'll probably castle. And now the good way to proceed is simply playing knight to c3. And your position here is extremely strong, especially this knight on f5 is a monstrous knight, and you can always play something like queen g4 in the future and go for the very simple checkmate threat. But along the way you're also setting a clever trap. If black says, okay, but I can just go ahead and take this pawn on e5, and it's actually the most played move of black, it falls into queen d4 trap. From here, the queen is attacking the knight directly, and indirectly, it's taking aim at the pawn on g7. Therefore, the knight cannot move away, or else the queen will checkmate the king, and so that's how you win this knight on e5. If they try d6 to support it, that doesn't really change anything. You trade bishops here and you play f4. Once again, with the same purpose, the knight can't go away, or else you'll checkmate them. If they try the last trick, playing pawn c5, you play queen e4, and now still there is a double attack to black's knights. So either way, you're gonna take one of them on the next move, and you're getting a very comfortable attack here, in addition to having an extra knight, so that's completely winning. We have just analyzed that by playing this move pawn d4, you can put black in trouble. And pawn takes d4 is not an option. It allows white to keep pushing with your attack after pawn e5, and yeah, now you keep chasing the knight, and it's not going to end well for black. Therefore, instead of taking the white's pawn on d4, the more solid option for black is playing pawn d6. And even though it's a better alternative for black, it still doesn't solve all of the black's problems, because here, even if you go into an endgame and you keep trading here, after pawn a4 you're still challenging black, and all of a sudden black is quite in trouble even in an endgame. Now, first of all, your threat is to take here, taking advantage of the pin along the a file so that black cannot recapture. Therefore, to avoid this, they usually push their pawn to b4, and now if you look at this position, the position looks symmetric and about equal, but black has a lot of weak pawns over here, a lot of weak squares that you can put pressure on, and therefore black is going to have a pretty hard life in this endgame. You can play bishop e3, and here most frequently your opponents will play another wrong move, castle. It's wrong, but it's very natural, because it falls into another issue. Bishop c5 attack, attacking the rook here, and when it goes away, you keep attacking with knight g5. Now your knight and bishop are teaming up together against this pawn f7. The only way to defend it would be to play bishop e6, which gives white the two bishops advantage and completely disrupts the black's pawn structure. So here, after the simple move knight d2, black is having a completely lost position, because all of their pawns are weak. They've got a lot of weak squares in addition to that, and you can easily, in the future, just keep attacking, bring your knight over here, bring your rook to d1, and yeah, gradually you will easily win this game and pick up all of these weak pawns. And I know sometimes people tell me that when a grandmaster commenting on a game over the internet says that the position is completely winning, white is easily winning, you just play natural moves, stuff like that. Sometimes you feel puzzled and you aren't sure like what is going on here and exactly how you're going to win this easily winning position, right? So if you feel like that, then I would just recommend that you check out my masterclass, because that goes beyond the subject of this opening. You just need to elevate your overall positional mastery, and you will realize that the position like that is easily winning, and specifically how you can do that. So again, check out the free masterclass by clicking the link below the video, and you'll get to know all these positional chess secrets. Moving on to the next common error, it happens in the old style Steinitz defense. Here, when I checked the database of games, I was a bit surprised to know that after the main move a6, the second most played move with over 1 million games played was the move pawn d6. Therefore, this old style defense is still popular, and I guess the reason is simplicity. Here, black does not need to know any theory, and they hope to get away from just playing casual, normal moves. And I'm going to show you how you can punish that. Okay, so here you play pawn d4, attacking the center, also threatening pawn d5 potentially, taking advantage of this pin. Therefore, black will take here on d4, you recapture with a knight, still threatening black's knight on c6, therefore black protects it. Here may take on c6, they recapture, you castle, and in this position, there is a really unknown thing. Most of your opponents will play the move knight f6, and it's hard to believe that such a standard move can be a mistake. But in this position, it is a mistake. And instead of playing knight c3, which is something that most players do, after watching this video, you'll know a lot more stronger way. You're playing queen to f3, bringing the queen out, and in some variations it will support your knight going there to f5, but even more so after they play bishop e7. You've set up here a really interesting discovered attack with pawn e5. Attacking the knight, and once the pawn is captured, you're capturing this pawn on c6, attacking a whole lot in the black's position here, therefore they'll have to recapture. Now queen takes c6, check to the king, and what's annoying for black is that they can't cover with the queen, because that leaves the a8 rook unprotected, and you can just go ahead and capture that. Therefore that's not an option, and they have to play knight to d7, putting the knight on a more passive square, but now you keep harassing them by playing rook d1. You are taking aim at this knight, and therefore the black's king cannot castle. This would leave the knight unprotected, and you would simply take it. Therefore, black has to do something else. Let's say they try bishop d6, desperately trying to close this line. Then you just play knight c3, you develop, and after they castle, you go knight e4. And now, because the bishop can't go away or else the knight will be lost, so at the very least, you'll take here on d6 and win the pawn. After something like, let's say, knight f6, you just go ahead and take here, you're winning the pawn, and you get into a completely winning endgame position where you're a pawn up, and you're going to develop your bishop here to e3, and after that, your queenside pawns will move forward and will easily help you to win the game here. So that's like a really interesting way for you to play and to punish these very, the opening. I would not even call it an error, but not the most precise way of playing for black, but you can really go crazy and swipe away the black's defense very easily. And there is also one more way for you to play here after black goes into the Steinitz defense. Again, it's not the most played move here. The most played move is pawn a6, but d6, as I shown you, is still relatively popular, second most played move, and therefore maybe in 1 game out of 3 they are quite likely, according to the statistics, to play the Steinitz defense against you. And if you want to know other ways of how you can punish more common lines in the Ruy Lopez, then you can check out my video with the 5 best traps in the Ruy Lopez, where I cover some additional lines. Anyway, let's go into the Steinitz defense. Here after d4, knight takes, bishop d7. We have just analyzed that bishop takes c6 is one good way for white to proceed here, but the other one is also playing a simple move such as castling. Here black would usually take here on d4, thinking that after this massive trade in the center, they're really safe and secure. Knight f6, knight c3, bishop e7, but in this position where black feels that it's completely safe and drawish for them, instead of playing like everyone else plays, something like bishop g5, there is a move which puts black under a serious pressure, which is rook d1. And if you know this move, you are most likely to win your games, because now you're setting it up for breaking through in the center with pawn e5 and using the pressure along the d file to attack black. And the problem for black is that it's not easy for them to do anything against that, because if they try moving the queen away somewhere, you always have some annoying moves with your knight, either to b5 or d5, going after that pawn on c7, and so that does not solve the problem. So in this position, instead of queen going to e6 or elsewhere, they usually simply castle. But in this case, you break through in the center with e5, you just execute your threat. They cannot take here on e5, because then in this case they're losing a piece after this exchange. Queen takes, knight takes, rook takes, and you're a piece up. You won that knight for nothing. Therefore, they can't do that. So let's take a move back here. Instead of that, they would have to move their knight away. And if they go knight e8, okay, you're not winning immediately, but after bishop f4, your pressure is just way too strong for black to handle. You are having the bishop and your heavy pieces lining up along the d file against the black's pawn on d6. Your knight can also easily be brought to d5 and put even more pressure on black. According to the database, they're usually trying to neutralize your pressure by going rook d8, but that certainly does not solve their problem, because now you can easily pick up this pawn on a7, which was left unprotected, and after that you can maybe even grab the other pawn, saving all the other threats that you've got here, such as knight to d5 and everything else. So that's completely winning for you. You can now watch the video that I mentioned earlier with additional traps against the Ruy Lopez that I didn't cover in this video by clicking the link on the screen. Also, you may attend my free masterclass and elevate your chess within the next 30 days, potentially greater than compared to the last year. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Stay tuned. Thank you.